Back for chapter 4, part 3 of All Quiet on the Western Front. It's a very long chapter, and our focus, don't forget, is on imagery, contrast, and personification. And there's all kinds of contrast. There's contrast between nature and technology, contrast between generations, contrast in images that we have, and you want to pay close attention to those things as we go on. Okay, part 4, All Quiet on the Western Front. Chapter 4, All Quiet on the Western Front, part 3, on page 65. We go back. It is time we return to the lorries. Don't forget those are trucks. The sky has become brighter, 3 o'clock in the morning. The breeze is fresh and cool. The pale hour makes our faces look gray. We trudge onward in single file through the trenches and shell holes, and come again to the zone of mist. Kaczynski is restive. That's a bad sign. "What's up, Cat?" says Krop. "I wish I were back home." Home? He means the huts. He's not even thinking about home. He's thinking about back where, the latrines are in the middle of the meadow. "We'll soon be out of it, Cat." He is nervous. I don't know. We come to the communication trench and then to the open fields. The little wood reappears. We know every foot of ground here. There's this cemetery with the mounds and the black crosses. So sometimes, especially in war, you have to bury people out in the middle of, a field someplace. They never get to go home. They never get to be buried with their families. They get to be buried there. And they put, crosses up in this case. That moment, it breaks out behind us. Swells, roars, thunders. We duck down. A cloud of flame shoots up 100 yards ahead of us. The next minute, under a second explosion, part of the wood rises slowly in the air. That means part of the forest. The trees are going up in the air. 3 or 4 trees sail up and then crash to pieces. The shells begin to hiss like safety valves. Heavy fire. "Take cover," yells somebody. "Cover!" The fields are flat. The wood is too distant and dangerous. The only cover is the graveyard and the mounds. So the only place that they can be safe is in a graveyard. How ironic is that? We stumble across in the dark, and as though he had been spat there, every man lies glued behind a mound. That's a simile. So somebody spit him onto the ground. Not a moment too soon. The dark goes mad. It heaves and raves. Darkness, blacker than the night, rush on us with giant strides. Over us and away. The flames of the explosions light up the graveyard. There is no escape anywhere. By the light of the shells, I try to get a view of the fields. They are surging, see. Daggers of flame from the explosions leap up like fountains, simile. It is impossible for anyone to break through it. The wood vanishes. It is pounded, crushed, torn to pieces. We must stay here in the graveyard. The earth bursts before us. It rains clods. Clods are big clumps of dirt. So every time a bomb hits the ground and all the dirt goes up into the air, clods of dirt, big chunks of dirt fall down on them, rains down on them. That's a metaphor because it's not really raining dirt. So that's a metaphor. I feel a smack. My sleeve is torn away by a splinter. And by splinter, he means a piece of the shell. So it's like shrapnel. I shut my fist, no pain. Still, that does not reassure me. Wounds don't hurt till afterwards. Very important line. I feel the arm all over. It is grazed but sound. Now a crack on the skull. I begin to lose consciousness. Like lightning, the thought comes to me. Don't faint. I sit down in the black broth, and it's not broth. Broth is soup. I sit down in the black broth and immediately come up to the top again. A splinter slashes into my helmet, but it has already traveled so far that it does not go through. I wipe the mud out of my eyes. A hole is torn up in front of me. Shells hardly ever land in the same hole twice. I'll get into it. With one lunge, I shoot as flat as a fish over the ground, simile. There it whistles again. Quickly I crouch together, claw for cover, feel something on the left, shove in beside it, and it gives way. I groan. The earth leaps. The blast thunders in my ears. I creep under the yielding thing, cover myself with it, draw it over me. It is wood, cloth. Cover, cover, miserable cover against the whizzing splinters. I open my eyes. My fingers grasp a sleeve, an arm. A wounded man? I'll yell to him. No answer. A dead man. My hand gropes farther, splinters of wood. Now I remember again that we are lying in the graveyard. But the shelling is stronger than everything. It wipes out the sensibilities. I merely crawl still farther under the coffin. It shall protect me through death, though death himself lies in it. Before me gapes the shell hole. I grasp it with my eyes as with fists. With one leap, I must be in it. There, I get a smack in the face. A hand clamps onto my shoulder. Has the dead man waked up? The hand shakes me. I turn my head. In the second of light, I stare into the face of Kaczynski. He has his mouth wide open and is yelling. I hear nothing. He rattles me, comes nearer in a momentary lull. His voice reaches me. Gas, 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 pass it on. That means their mustard gas is being put into the trenches. I grab for my gas mask. Some distance from me there lies someone. I think of nothing but this. That fellow there must know. Gas, gas. I call, I lean toward him. I swipe at him with the satchel. That's a bag. He doesn't see. Once again. He merely ducks. It's a recruit, a young guy. I look at Cat desperately. He has his mask on. I pull out mine too. My helmet falls to one side. It slips over my face. I reach the man. His satchel is on the side nearest me. I seize the mask, pull it over his head. He understands. I let go, and with a jump, drop into the shell hole. The dull thud of the gas shells mingles with the crashes of the light explosives. A bell sounds between the explosions. Gongs and metal clappers warning everyone. Gas, gas, gas. It's like a warning siren, but they're bells, so that everybody knows that there's gas involved. Put on your gas mask. Someone plumps down behind me. Another. I wipe the goggles of my mask clear of the moist breath. It is Cat, Crop, and someone else. All four of us lie there in heavy, watchful suspense and breathe as lightly as possible. These first minutes with the mask decide between life and death. Is it airtight? I remember the awful sights in the hospital, the gas patients who in day-long suffocation cough up their burned lungs in clots. Mustard gas is a horrible, horrible thing. It turns your lungs to foam, and it's exceedingly painful. It burns your eyes. You can go blind. All kinds of things. It's really terrible, terrible way to die, and you die slowly. You don't die immediately. Cautiously, the mouth applied to the valve, I breathe. The gas still creeps over the ground and sinks into All Hallows. Like a big, soft jellyfish, it floats into our shell hole and lolls there obscenely. I nudge Cat. It is better to crawl out and lie on top than to stay where the gas collects most. But we don't get as far as that. A second bombardment begins. It is no longer as though shells roared. It is the earth itself raging. With a crash, something black bears down on us. It lands close beside us. A coffin thrown up. I see Cat move and I crawl across. The coffin has hit the fourth man in our hole on his outstretched arm. He tries to tear off his gas mask with the other hand. Crop seizes him just in time, twists the hand sharply behind his back, and holds it fast. Cat and I proceed to free the wounded arm. The coffin lid is loose and bursts open. We are easily able to pull it off. We toss the corpse out. It slides down to the bottom of the shell hole. Then we try to loosen the underpart. Fortunately, the man swoons. That means he faints. And Crop is able to help us. We no longer have to be careful, but work away till the coffin gives with a sigh before the spade that we have dug in under it. A spade is a small shovel. It has grown lighter. Cat takes a piece of the lid, places it under the shuttered arm, and we wrap all our bandages round it. For the moment we can do no more. Inside the gas mask, my head booms and roars. It is nigh bursting. That means it's close to bursting. My lungs are tight. They breathe always the same hot, used-up air. The veins on my temples are swollen. I feel I am suffocating. A gray light filters through to us. I climb out over the edge of the shell hole. In the dirty twilight lies a leg torn clean off. The boot is quite whole. I take that all in at a glance. Now something stands up a few yards distant. I polish the windows. In my excitement, they are immediately dimmed again. I peer through them. The man there no longer wears his mask. I wait some seconds. He has not collapsed. He looks round and makes a few paces. Rattling in my throat, I tear my mask off too and fall down. The air streams into me like cold water. My eyes are bursting. The wave sweeps over me and extinguishes me. The shelling has ceased. I turn towards the crater, beckoning to the others. They take off their masks. We lift up the wounded man, one taking his splinted arm. And so we stumble off hastily. The graveyard is a mass of wreckage. Coffins and corpses lie strewn about. They've been killed once again. How ironic is that? But each of them that was flung up saved one of us. Again, ironic. So a dead man and his body, because the body or the coffin covered the other men, saved the live men from dying. The hedge is destroyed. The rails of the light railway are torn up and rise stiffly in the air. Great arches. Someone lies in front of us. We stop. Crop goes on alone with the wounded man. The man on the ground is a recruit. His hip is covered with blood. He is so exhausted that I feel for my water bottle, where I have rum and tea. Cat restrains my hand and stoops over him. Where's it got you, comrade? His eyes, where is the injury? His eyes move. He's too weak to answer. We slit open his trousers carefully. He groans, gently, gently. It is much better. If he has been hit in the stomach, he oughtn't to drink anything. There's no vomiting. That's a good sign. We lay the hip bare. It is one mass of mincemeat and bone splinters. The joint has been hit. This lad won't walk anymore. I wet his temples with a moistened finger and give him a swig of tea. His eyes move again. We see now that the right arm is bleeding as well. Cat spreads out 2 wads of dressing, as wide as possible so that they will cover the wound. I look for something to bind loosely round it. We have nothing more, so I slip up the wounded man's trouser leg, and still farther in order to use a piece of his underpants as a bandage. But he's wearing none. I now look at him closely. He is the fair-headed boy of a little while ago. In the meantime, Cat has taken a bandage from a dead man's pocket, and we carefully bind the wound. I say to the youngster, who looks at us fixedly, "We're going for a stretcher now." Then he opens his mouth and whispers, "Stay here. We'll be back again soon. We're only going to get a stretcher for you." We don't know if he understands. He whimpers like a child and plucks at us. "Don't go away." Cat looks around and whispers, "Shouldn't we just take a revolver and put an end to it?" In other words, shouldn't we just put him out of his misery by shooting him? Because he'll be in so much suffering and pain. Very similar to what the other guy was saying about killing the horses, deadering. So the comparison between human beings and animals, has this man now become just an animal to be put out of his misery, or should we try and save him? Is it more important to save humanity, or are people just animals? It's kind of what the author's trying to say. The youngster will hardly survive the carrying. In other words, he's going to die anyway, suffering. And at the most, he will only last a few days. What he has gone through so far is nothing to what he's in for till he dies. Now he is numb and feels nothing. In an hour, he will become one screaming bundle of intolerable pain. Every day that he can live will be a howling torture. And to whom does it matter whether he has them or not? I nod, "Yes, Cat. We ought to put him out of his misery." He stands still a moment. He has made up his mind. We look round, but we are no longer alone. A little group is gathering. From the shell holes and trenches appear heads. We get a stretcher. Cat shakes his head. Such a kid. He repeats it. Young innocence. It's super important because they're innocent. They're kids. At once, at once, Paul was a kid too. They're no longer kids. So because there are other people watching, they can't shoot him. So they're going to send him on the stretcher to try and get some care. Our losses are less than was to be expected. 5 killed and 8 wounded. It was, in fact, quite a short bombardment. 2 of our dead lie in the upturned graves. We merely throw the earth in on them. They don't even get a proper burial. We go back. We trot off silently in single file, one behind the other. The wounded are taken to the dressing station. The morning is cloudy. The bearers make a fuss about numbers and tickets. The wounded whimper. It begins to rain. All of those are signs of, the heavy mood of the thing. Start thinking about mood. Mood is overwhelming in this. It's almost always a sad mood. And when it isn't a sad mood, there's another way you can contrast things. When it isn't a sad or depressing or fearful mood, that weird, incongruous, they're so happy to be back in the latrines and the meadows thing is a huge stark contrast to what they're feeling. And it's ironic because, it's amazing what small things make you happy when you're in the middle of severe crisis and survival. We go back. We trot off silently in single file, one behind the other. The wounded are taken to the dressing station. The morning is cloudy. The bearers make a fuss about numbers and tickets. The wounded whimper. It begins to rain. I just read that paragraph again. Sorry. An hour later, we reach our lorries and climb in. There is more room now than there was, which indicates that people have died. There's more room. They're more comfortable. That's ironic. An hour later, we reach our lorries and climb in. The rain becomes heavier. We take out waterproof sheets and spread them over our heads. The rain rattles down and flows off at the sides in streams. The lorries bump through the holes, and we rock to and fro in a half sleep. 2 men in the front of the lorry have long forked poles. They watch for telephone wires, which hang crosswise over the road so low that they might easily pull our heads off. The 2 fellows take them at the right moment on poles and lift them over behind us. We hear their call, "Mind, wire!" Dip the knee in a half sleep and straighten up again. Monotonously, that means boringly, over and over again. The lorries sway. Monotonously come the calls. Monotonously falls the rain. Notice the author here uses repetition to give you more of a feeling of what monotonous means. Over and over, boring, over and over. So by using repetition, he reinforces that idea. He uses the word more than once, 3 times in fact. It falls on our heads and on the heads of the dead up in the line, on the body of the little recruit with the wound that is much too big for his hip. It falls on Kemrich's grave. It falls in our hearts. An explosion sounds somewhere. We wince. Our eyes become tense. Our hands are ready to vault over the side of the lorry into the ditch by the road. Nothing happens. Only the monotonous cry. "Mind! Wire!" Our knees bend. We are again half asleep. So even repeating this at the end of chapter 4, even repeating this, that every time there's wires they have to bend down, and they do this robotically, is something of a, sorry about that bouncing up and down, is something of repetition as well. So in this chapter, in chapter 4, we've seen a ton of imagery. We've seen a bunch of personification, especially with the horses and with the earth and with natural things to look for. We've seen contrast between kids and adults, between experienced and inexperienced. The word innocent was used frequently. There's a lot of repetition, and the contrast between personalities and images and all kinds of things that are involved, and coffins and live and dead. These are things to look at as you move forward, because really the author is using these very, very particular literary devices to give you, what it's like to be a human being on a battlefield, on a real battlefield where people are, where you have to often abandon your humanity, or that or your only humanity, your only humanity left is the mercy of killing somebody else so that they won't suffer. Um, it's an interesting idea that we can bring forward to today's life, because frequently people talk about um, end of life decisions when people have very bad cancer or diseases or are very well injured. One wonders when to pull the plug. Is this a humane thing to do? And so, unfortunately, in the most awful of circumstances in life, not just in war, which is why we frequently compare our lives to war and to battle, we have to make these awful, awful human decisions that have no good result either way. So, something to think about as we move forward into chapter 5, and that'll come next. So, gather your thoughts, gather your notes, start thinking about it, and look for the challenges that apply to this.